Chapter 115, Ouyang Chen, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Red Fox was just like a bad student who had been called upon by his teacher. He gaped speechlessly with a bewildered expression. Ouyang Chen entered his strict teacher mode. The cold and clear gaze behind his glasses made Red Fox's tense nerves shudder. Now came a second question. What is the logic of the inner world? Red Fox's mouth gaped, but not a word came out. In fact, he had long since spoken out the thoughts in his mind when he was rebuking Luo Nan. Was there a difference? It's all about politics, reality, and compromise. But spitting these opinions in front of Ouyang Chen was a very difficult thing to do. Ouyang Chen was not hoping for a response. He just answered directly, the logic of the inner world is decided by destructive capability. The scope of extraordinary power's destructive capability is what determines the boundaries of the logic for the inner world. Red Fox became hoarse, but he was unable to refute these words. When compared to normal people, the number of ability users is quite small. However, we possess powerful destructive capabilities. We have formed societies and orders, casting organizations all over the world. In turn, we have allowed destructive potential to cover the globe. All that is needed is our will, and we can directly influence everyone's lives or deaths on this planet. Normal, secular society has been warped and twisted by us in this manner. Ultimately, this is a sort of extortion logic. President, Red Fox had turned into someone who suffered from a communication disorder. He had no idea how to express his opinions. Ouyang Chen's lips hooked into a faint smile. I'll switch to better-sounding words then. We can call it the logic of the strong, for the strongest destructive powers are erected upon the various paths of the strong's self-logic, upon this foundation. In our current situation, there is not a single destructive power of the strong that is able to cover the entire world. Ultimately, we still have limits. We have to divide the world. Therefore, the strong are axles of the inner world, and they radiate out circles of influence big and small. The customary method of exchange in the inner world all depends on the circles of the strong. Contention, compromise, and exchange arise within this circle. The strong are the root of logic for the inner world. Everything else, the conflicts, compromise, trickeries, politics, are all just for show and formality. Then comes the next question. Who are the strong? The gears in Red Fox's brain finally began to operate when faced with this third question. Ouyang Chen pointed at the rooftops of the three large buildings surrounding Frost River reality. Three first oblatums are acting together. They do not care for the price and can let those skyscrapers collapse for all they care. Are they strong? Red Fox answered cautiously, that depends on who you compare them with. Excellent. As far as Red Fox could recall, this was the first time Ouyang Chen gave him approval since they met. But what did this president approve of? Ouyang Chen adjusted his glasses, his gaze unprecedentedly cold and raw. Finally, you know that power and strength are all relative. I can give a few supplementary words. When the strong face off, the strong brings out a base stacked with real and material achievements and accomplishments. So who, where, and what are you facing? Red Fox's heart suddenly throbbed. He was stupefied on the spot. Facing, who am I facing? Dim and scattered memories formed together like a cloud. Red Fox had a vague recollection of the time when he first arrived in Xia City. Now that he thought about it, it was really quite strange. He had suffered such a bitter lesson, yet he continued to entrust himself in this damnable society. Yes, it was because of the resources and benefits of the society. It was because he needed to train hard and quickly improve himself. Then he would return to Hu City and exact vengeance with pleasure. But day after day and year after year had passed. How could he forget? When did he forget? For what reason did he forget? It seemed like he forgot these things too. Was it because of the limits of his talent, or the fact that he practically did not make an inch of progress? Was it because of the passage of time, healing the harm to his heart? No, ultimately, it was as He Yueyin had said. His self-logic had been distorted by the logic he detested the most. The word imploding. Wasn't it none other than the most habitual word of that trash from headquarters? Distorted. Red Fox pulled out his arms and looked at his hands. He saw the slow changes that had been occurred over the years to the structure of his body, and he felt his body be so unfamiliar to him. Ouyang Chen's voice entered his ear. Don't let your mind wander. Let us continue discussing what it means to be strong. Oh, this relates to why you're stupid. The upheaval in Red Fox's mind was shattered. His mental frustrations were lessened, but his thoughts grew all the more chaotic. He lifted his head blankly and looked at this president who had just given him an awakening blow. Whether it is in comparison or facing off, an example is needed. You say, who do you think is the strongest here at the present? Obviously, it's the president. Red Fox did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he responded without the slightest hesitation. Ouyang Chen was currently the one and only extraordinary officially registered in the Xia City branch of the society. He stood at the apex that was the pyramid of humanity. He was super strong. Though secret-bound First Oblatum and Wang of the Order of Justice may be someone powerful enough to make one's expression change when his name was heard, he was far from being placed as an equal with Ouyang Chen. The extraordinaries had an agreement in place to restrict their actions. If Ouyang Chen were to completely ignore these restrictions and make a move with determination, the three First Oblatums of the secular side would need to risk their lives to summon their holy entity. They would need to kneel down on their knees and ask Feichel to change sides and give them a hand. However, there still would not be the possibility of another confrontation. The battle would be decisive. Ouyang Chen was quite blunt. He nodded in acknowledgement. Then who's next? Just talk about the people on our side. The secretary, Red Fox replied quite swiftly. Ouyang Chen did not comment. Then who's next? Red Fox slowly mulled over his answer. Then comes me, Ying Kitty, paper-cut bamboo pole. I'm not familiar with Bai Xinyan. Ouyang Chen laughed, but he did not appear to express an opinion. Then an accurate perspective drawing of a building appeared before them. It was none other than Frost River reality. The figures of several people were projected within it. They were He Yueyin and the other members of the society. Their sizes might have been small, but they were lifelike. What about him? The person that Ouyang Chen was pointing at none was other than the teenager whom Red Fox had skipped over, inadvertently or otherwise, Luo Nan. Red Fox sneered. Him, he's not even an awakened. Yep, he has yet to awaken. Ouyang Chen nodded and sighed. He then muttered, ordinary people are bright, I alone am muddled. Ordinary people are pure, I alone am smothered. Red Fox's ability regarding classic prose was quite shallow. He was all confused hearing this. He could only raise his hand in surrender. President. Ouyang Chen did not mean to give Red Fox a hard time. He laughed and said, classical texts are not my specialty either. These words from my understanding mean the following. Everyone's energy is finite. When one establishes high-level logic, It is hard to deal with the numerous and chaotic logic of the normal, secular world separately. When one forms a high-level logic, the logic of the normal, secular world becomes completely meaningless. Therefore, intelligent people of the normal, secular world will find themselves muddled in the dark. They become like children, young and clumsy. The further the distance between high-level logic and normal logic, the more intense the ratio between the two. Once it reaches a certain level, one may even find themselves unable to connect with normal logic and run in the opposite direction. There is an old saying, "The bright way seems dim. The forward way seems backward. The straight way seems crooked." Ouyang Chen gazed attentively at the exquisite projection, his pupils growing serene and distant. At a higher level, at a stronger face-off, how would it be possible to know the hardships within when using the eyes of ordinary people, using their ways of assessment? Furthermore, he is still a novice. Everything has to start from scratch. Chapter 116, Observing the Constellations, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. In Frost River Reality, Area A, at the border where the private room areas and the public arena intersected, a group of people looked at each other in dismay. He Yueyin had stopped talking because Red Fox had oddly entered a state of silence. No matter what they did, he did not respond at all. The fierce emotions he had before was like a bonfire that had burned out, vanishing in a puff of smoke. She's okay at giving orders, but her ability to talk heart to heart is quite average in my opinion, Zhang Yingying whispered to Bai Xinyan, acting as quite the typical armchair expert. Bai Xinyan tightened her grasp on Zhang Yingying's neck to shut her up. He Yueyin was as quiet as ever. Her eyes looked downcast as she muttered to herself. On a large street, Bamboo Pole quickly made his way toward Frost River Reality. At the same time, he utilized the surrounding monitoring cameras to lock onto Red Fox's image after a few swivels. The angle of the image was not good, but he was still able to see Red Fox with his eye-catching red jacket. Red Fox stood like a stump in the middle of a stream of people. He appeared still and spellbound. It was unknown what thoughts were running through his mind. Bamboo Pole let out a sigh of relief. It is good that he hasn't directly charged inside. Those words were actually effective. Papercut strove hard to catch up with Bamboo Pole's pace, his subtly plump body swaying back and forth. He tried suggesting, "Can we check the corpse's head to make sure?" The two specifically avoided using the encrypted channel so as to avoid provoking Red Fox. Bamboo Pole thought about it. He shook his head. It's too dangerous. According to the new dynamic map provided by Luo Nan, the corpse marked as an Oblatum Knight was the closest enemy from He Yueyin and the others. However, the various Oblatum Knights were not too far away from each other. Right now, the situation in Frost River Reality Area A was like a bizarre game of Chinese chess. The river dividing the rival territories was the border between the private room area and the public arena. It separated the society and the order of justice into two sides on this chessboard. The society may have laid out their rooks, knights, and cannons, but they had not really made a move. On the other side, the enemy's king and bishops were rolled into one mass, but their other pieces were readily available. Their formation was rigid and tight. Normally rooks, knights, cannons, and pawns were used to grind at the enemy king's preparations in a game. However, if the society were to cross the river into enemy territory in real life, then there would be a lot of pressure for the society to bear. Papercut could only shrug helplessly after hearing Bamboo Pole's explanation. Bad things will happen if we go check. Bad things will happen if we don't check. Isn't this madness? If so, Boss Luo should say some words to clarify things, right? Originally, Papercut was not on any side in the dispute between Red Fox and Luo Nan, but Red Fox's intense and decisive reaction had more or less evoked a few sympathetic thoughts within Papercut. At the same time, Luo Nan's long period of silence made Papercut feel a bit dissatisfied. Though Luo Nan was still a teenager, he needed to display sufficient professional accomplishments and teamwork ability. After all, he had entered this circle of ability users and was participating in their operations. This was especially true in dangerous times such as now. A single weasel could kill off their entire team with just a thought. As a teammate who would not be wary of Luo Nan. Although Red Fox's reaction was drastic, his words held some truth to them. Papercut cast a glance at the encrypted channel. He then saw a young, infantile face quite unexpectedly. He did not know what was going on. Cat Eyes, who was sharing her perspective, had her sights fixed on Luo Nan's face for quite some time. This young and inexperienced-looking high school student had been silent since the contention started. He was not emotionally moved at all, whether it be by mocking words or actions of support. Upon further inspection, Luo Nan should still be focused on his all-encompassing senses. His eyes were vacant and his gaze ethereal. His attention was not on the matter with Red Fox. Luo Nan's actions could be praised for being responsible and diligent, undisturbed by either praise or humiliation. However, his actions could also be criticized for being too arrogant and reclusive, selfish and cold-blooded. Kids these days. Papercut leaned toward the latter with his views, but he was ultimately more moderate than Red Fox. In the end, he just sent Cat Eyes a private message. "Hey, Kitty, do you know what's up with him?" Cat Eyes did not respond to him instantly. Her perspective did not change at all either. Was she entranced and just watching? Papercut felt helpless. He could only send another message. Is there a way to verify the order's methods without provoking them? The instant he sent this message, he inexplicably recalled the society's mid-level training course, Teamwork. The famous instructor had concluded, when the common messaging channel in the team becomes idle and private messages become prevalent, the breakup of the team becomes close at hand. Papercut frowned, and he looked at Luo Nan's avatar inside the encrypted channel. He felt even more horrible. At this moment, Cat Eye's perspective swayed. It seemed like there was also someone was beckoning to her on the side. "Kitty, what do you say?" Inside Frost River reality, Zhang Yingying could not hold herself back any longer. She forcefully pried Bai Xinyan's arm a bit from her throat and called out to Cat Eyes. Papercut was not the only one to have felt the horrible team atmosphere right now. Zhang Yingying had stood staunchly by Luo Nan's side, but her mind was extremely clear. Luo Nan was the focal point of the conflict, but the way this kid handled things was closed off. It was extremely inappropriate. Right now, acting as the mysterious quiet guy is not popular anymore. Everyone likes cheery, extroverted men. But Luo Nan, this brother, really could not be wakened up. Bai Xinyan, who possessed the perspective of a doctor, recommended Zhang Yingying to not disturb Luo Nan while he was engaging in his mental senses. This was to avoid mishaps from occurring. As for He Yueyin, this senior staff member who gave the impression of being callous and intelligent, was quite reserved tonight for some unknown reason. She did not speak what was on her mind and kept her thoughts hidden. The target this time was vague. Things were completely different than last week's mission, with the human-faced arachnid. It appeared that He Yueyin had yet to truly clarify what their mission was so far, and this made Red Fox angry to the point of his brain exploding. Zhang Yingying could only helplessly consult with Cat Eyes, who held the most expertise in this core issue. If Cat Eyes could understand Luo Nan's intentions and help explain things or perhaps testify for him, then this tight knot of a problem would likely loosen up. Cat Eyes did not respond right after she was beckoned. There was a lag of 2 seconds before she suddenly turned her head in a fashion that was just like she had been startled awake. Such an action gave Zhang Yingying a fright. "You're fine, right?" "I'm fine." Cat Eyes reached out her hand and straightened her flat-brimmed cap, which had been crooked up until now. The shadow that fell from the brim covered half her cheeks. "What did you say just now?" Zhang Yingying looked at her dubiously and said, "I'm talking about verifying things. Red Fox is unwilling to forgive Luo Nan, and Luo Nan, this fellow, is so passive that you won't even get a fart out of him even if you smack him a couple times. Do you have a way to verify what he's saying is correct? Something more dependable?" On the other side, Papercut nodded in hidden agreement. His thoughts were the same as Zhang Yingying's. But soon he saw that Cat Eyes did not have an answer. Instead, her gaze shifted once again back to Luo Nan's face. Her gaze was a bit deviated at first, but then it sprung back. It was as if that young and infantile face possessed some sort of inconceivable magnetic-like force. She was enchanted by his rhythm. Papercut could not hold back from cursing in his mind. Yet at this very moment, Cat Eye's vision suddenly concentrated with a high degree of focus. It was to the point that her entire field of vision became blurred. There was only one thing clear. They were slowly lifting up, right in the center of the interface where Cat Eye's shared perspective could be seen. They were pupils that were somewhat bright and mottled. They were Luo Nan's pupils. This character, who was the focal point of the contention, seemed to have finally heard everyone's doubts and dissatisfactions at last. At least for now, he had walked out from his enclosed logic and had finally interacted with the external world. The target of Luo Nan's gaze was Cat Eyes. Since Papercut was following Cat Eye's shared perspective, it was the same as looking through Cat Eye's eyes and locking gazes with Luo Nan. Well, locking gazes was not precisely correct. It should be described as a one-sided observation. For some inexplicable reason, Papercut felt a cold shiver suddenly run through his body when his gaze locked with Luo Nan's pupils, which were far from being described as clear. In this very moment, the rain which fell endlessly from the sky grew colder by several degrees, and this coldness seeped down to the bones. The faint cry of Bamboo Pole's voice entered his ear. "Those eyes are like a demon's." Chapter 116, Observing Constellations, Part 2-2. Translator Strivon. There were many people who had noticed the aberration within Luo Nan's eyes, but Cat Eyes felt an intensity that was 10 times stronger than anyone else. It must be known that she was the one who had faced Luo Nan directly. Moreover, she was the unlucky fool who had received Luo Nan's torment early on. Right now there were chains locking her body and soul deathly tight, and a demonic look now appeared from within Luo Nan's turbid eyes. From the outside to the inside, from the inside to the outside, she fell fully into them. The most frightening aspect of all this was the fact that she had no idea how Luo Nan did this. She did not have a shred of a clue. It was like a figment of her imagination, but the trembling deep within her body and soul contained realness and substance. Cat Eye's breathing stagnated for about half a second. It was within this half-a-second period that memories were evoked of last week at Limestone Water Village pub, that time when she became the victim of Luo Nan's demonic ritual. Fear had surged forth like the turbulent tide. The boiling emotions were seemingly able to drown her at any time. It was so much that she had the impulse to turn tail and run. Cat Eye's feet did not move. Actually, her entire body was frozen. In this moment, she saw Luo Nan raise his right hand. His 5 fingers spread slightly open and then curved. His forefinger subtly straightened a bit, as if he was drawing something subconsciously. It also seemed that he was going to directly probe her. As Luo Nan's arm moved forward, Cat Eyes could clearly feel her eyebrows slightly quiver. However, the tips of Luo Nan's fingers had yet to touch her. His arm had yet to extend completely, so there was still some distance between his fingers and Cat Eye's cap. Luo Nan just tapped once from far away, the orientation coinciding with the space between Cat Eye's brows. With the tap of the finger came a downward stroke. It happened right after, no maybe even simultaneously. Cat Eye's face, throat, shoulders, chest, abdomen, and even her legs burst with tremors in various areas one after another. Luo Nan's finger traveled down in a single action, like a shadow following a body. He instantly traced over Cat Eyes, seemingly delineating the outline of an extremely simple figure. Cat Eyes did not make a single move. She could not move, giving Luo Nan free rein. This really offended Zhang Yingying, who was on the side. The meaning behind Luo Nan's abnormal actions did not matter. It had increased the divide between him and the others. It made matters even worse. She immediately bellowed, "Hey, have you gone mad?" Luo Nan turned his head upon hearing her voice, his gaze locking with Zhang Yingying's for the first time in a while. He reached out his hand and tapped with his finger through empty space. Zhang Yingying was fuming. She could not move her upper body. Filled with hate and resentment for Luo Nan's behavior, Zhang Yingying forcefully kicked with her legs. She wanted to give this kid, who had fallen into a possessed state, a good teaching. But her beautiful, slender, and snow-white legs could only lift up halfway before tremors started to spread from various points on her upper body. Zhang Yingying knew that things were serious now. She went, "Hey," and could not refrain from squirming even though Bai Xinyan had a hold on her neck. Zhang Yingying wanted to stop these inexplicable tremors and itchings. She raised one of her long legs up, but it weakened and fell back down. No matter how much Zhang Yingying tried to dodge, Luo Nan's probing finger was able to accurately match up with the tremor points on her body. Another outline was delineated in an instant. It was so fast that Bai Xinyan did not have time to release her arm and give Zhang Yingying her freedom. Zhang Yingying was furious now, but then something happened the instant Luo Nan's finger stopped in its place. Zhang Yingying's white rainbow, which was constantly flowing and coiling around her body, oddly gave off a faint cry. The cry resonated with the tremor points on her body. Her power that she spent several hard days to purify seemed to become even more refined and clear. She was captured by this sudden amazement. Only Zhang Yingying knew of the changes that had occurred in her body. However, Luo Nan's otherworldly and freakish display had quite the impact on He Yueyin, who had been calm and cool-headed all this time. She could only look with bulging eyes at Luo Nan's actions and was no longer muttering to herself in thought. Luo Nan retrieved his hand upon completing the drawing of Zhang Yingying's outline. From his perspective, he had done enough. Luo Nan closed his eyes as he no longer needed to use his fleshly eyes. Bright starlight lit within the area covered by his mental senses. Cat eyes was located in that position, but what he saw was not cat eyes. Instead, there were glittering starlights coming from 10 points. There were connecting lines between these points, and together they formed a simple structure. The same thing occurred at He Yueying's position, though the structure there was a bit more concise. These were like the basic compositional forms that people often use to mark the starry night. These were constellations, and the number of these constellations was endlessly increasing within Luo Nan's range of mental senses. Although the shield of truth blessing from Fairchild was temporary, it was ultimately able to allow Luo Nan to understand something. He was able to understand what he could ultimately do with his current level of soul strength, provided he had a resilient enough body capable of enduring it. The merged body and soul state had many limitations compared to the pure out-of-body state. However, there were many advantages unattainable in soul form. The most direct difference was precisely reflected within the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. The outline of a configuration for a body and soul merging was the backbone for a high-efficiency conversion of energy and information. Though this causes an explosive increase in pressure toward the fleshly body, the harm and consumption of the resulting mutual interference was lowered by over 50% at minimum. In other words, the quality of Luo Nan's soul strength interfering with reality had increased by over twofold in an instant. Moreover, the disturbances he had to overcome during this process was greatly reduced as well. One of the more visible effects was a sharp increase to his mental precision. Luo Nan had always been particularly sensitive toward energy and information, so there was not much to say in that aspect. In regards to the material plane, the embodiment of his precision could be measured by the display of his limits in applying mental clairvoyance on his body. Before, his limits of mental clairvoyance were approximately 1/10 of a millimeter when observing his own body. When observing things outside his body, his limits were on the millimeter level. Here, he could only observe things with a rough estimation. It was not particularly meticulous. However, the limits of his external precision had now easily broken through the 10th millimeter realm. The quality of the resolution had exceeded what was achievable by the naked eye. Although there was still a heavenly distance between this and a precision observation instrument on the nanometer level, this represented that everything within the range of his mental clairvoyance could be seen as if he himself was personally there. No matter the shadow, no matter the corner, it did not depend on the intensity of lighting at all. Everything could be perceived completely. Additionally, if Luo Nan focused his energy and shrunk the range, the resolution would be increased to another level. The possibilities were endless. A sharp increase in precision was certainly good, but the first thing this change brought for Luo Nan was inconvenience. It brought large quantities of useless details and garbage information. There was floating dust, crawling insects, the dirt by the edge of walls, and of course, the background hum of electric currents. There were the jumbled sounds of humans breathing, and the sound of rain hitting the rooftop of the amusement center. The information of various locations outside was included. There were the temperature variations, the exchange of air currents, and so on. The details, which were once hard to notice, all interweaved and mixed together. They packed into Luo Nan. The information stimulated him with several layers and several angles. It would naturally be fed to the structure of his body and soul. However, the processing rate was destined to be limited by the speed of his neurotransmitters. This was the limitation of the material plane. Not everything big and small could be processed. Some information had to be rejected. It must be stated that a blurry sort of mechanism of discerning had been formed in the human body through several 100,000 years of evolution. The mechanism worked by focusing on the overall characteristics of a given object rather than on excessive detail. The pressure brought on by discerning excessive detail was thereby avoided. However, the current problem that Luo Nan was facing laid in the sudden increase of his sensing precision. What had been blurry overall characteristics was now divided into great quantities of clear details. The boundary between these two distinctions had been broken. The clearer the details, the larger the quantity of information and the greater the consumption of analytic resources. This directly influenced the upper limit of Luo Nan receiving this information. It also limited his sensing range. Therefore, Luo Nan had to redefine this boundary. He looked deeper into these various details for more extensive connections. He endlessly combined similar characteristics to form overall concepts better suited for his current circumstances. He interweaved and constructed orderly structures that were distinctly vivid. He started from the very beginning. He was becoming cognizant of the world all anew. Chapter 117, Unfurling the Star River, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Such an old world, how could it be interpreted anew? Luo Nan was faced with this challenge the instant he unleashed his all-encompassing sensing. He had to concentrate his full attention to analyze various basic elements of information. He had to arrange these elements in order once again. An ancient Buddhist master had once spoken of 3 realms of Zen. In the first realm, one sees a mountain as a mountain, and one sees water as water. One sees things with eyes of innocence. However, there was a moment in time where Luo Nan had reached the second realm. Here, one sees a mountain as not a mountain, and one sees water as not water. What was seen on the surface was superficial, fake like an illusion. Everything possessed unwritten rules hidden behind a mask of falseness. Luo Nan had gained a new understanding of the world, where a mountain was not purely a mountain, and water was not purely water. Living people and living emotions were all broken down and analyzed. Take, for instance, cat eyes. Luo Nan knew she was in fear the instant he made contact with her. In this living example, Luo Nan broke down the fear into her breathing, her heart rate, her pupils, her flesh, and even her hormone secretion. All kinds of micro-level details of change were similarly broken down and analyzed. Then Luo Nan reconstructed the fear from the beginning. He wanted to find more concise, more innate special compositions sufficient to describe all sorts of people in all sorts of states. If it was anyone else faced this large quantity of details and materials, they would probably be knocked stupid on the spot. Their minds would not be able to recover their original functionality. In this case, they would be no different than becoming mentally disabled. Luo Nan was knocked stupid in the beginning. The range of his mental senses had a radius extending approximately 80 meters. It covered the entirety of Area A, and Luo Nan had nearly collapsed. It was like an internet virus. Great quantities of detailed information came flooding into the various senses of his body over a short period of time. The information congested his neural network. This intense stimulation over a short period of time caused a serious inhibition to his nerve activity. Luo Nan was aware that his functions were atrophying substantially. His IQ would soon drop quite a bit. Fortunately, Luo Nan had the Shield of Truth's blessing, which revealed its effects. His nervous system, and even his entire fleshly body, had been substantially increased in terms of resilience and regeneration ability. This allowed him to push through the initial assault of garbage information. Afterward, Luo Nan made a crucial decision. For now, he would give up on everything that existed purely on the material plane. He would only pay attention to the mutual interference between the mental plane and the material plane. In other words, the realm of life. Luo Nan made this decision right around the time Red Fox reproached that He Yueyin was wiping his butt for him. At the time, Luo Nan just wanted to accomplish He Yueyin's mission in the most outstanding way. He wanted to shut Red Fox's dirty mouth in a single breath. According to the needs of the mission, the most crucial thing was to find the concealed Oblatum Knights of the Order of Justice. Luo Nan's decision was one that was made driven by the circumstances. However, it was because of this reason that Luo Nan was unexpectedly able to break through a bottleneck with his train of thought. The number of constellations was endlessly increasing. Let alone Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying, everybody in his surroundings, including He Yueyin, Bai Xinyan, Zhu Weilan, and Zhu Lei, were under the clairvoyance of Luo Nan's mental senses. They were all transforming into constellations. Zhang Yingying and Cat Eyes constellations were practically abstract symbols. Compared to those two, the images of the others looked more like rough sketches that were made through quick tracing. Their lines were irregular. The star dots obstructed each other. They seemed there, but not there. They had a bit of an indeterminate flavor to them. Luo Nan called these life sketches. This was his new interpretation of this old world. The world of reality was something he could still overlook for now. Luo Nan let himself experience and comb through the marvels of these life sketches. However, Luo Nan was defenseless. Someone grabbed him by the collar and said, "Kid, you're acting like a hooligan. What the hell are you up to?" Only Zhang Yingying could be so direct. She had finally broken free of Bai Xinyan's control and had charged up to retaliate. In the blink of an eye, she asked Cat Eyes, "Kitty, are you all right?" Cat Eyes did not speak. Her eyes remained downcast. The shadow of her flat-brimmed cap blocked half her face. Her expression was not a happy one no matter how one looked. "Hey, I say, have you guys had enough?" Papercut could not hold back his words within the encrypted channel. "Now is not the time to be flirting around, right?" These words were directed at Zhang Yingying, but halfway through, Luo Nan's pair of motley-colored pupils oddly came to mind for Papercut. He shivered once more and instinctively felt that this fellow with a demonic gaze should not be ignored. The gears of his mind spun, and he got straight to the point and said, "Boss Luo, I ask of nothing else, but can you say some words of explanation? Even if you have no proof, having justification is fine." Papercut and Bamboo Pole were just outside of Frost River reality at this time and had managed to lock onto Red Fox's position. There was another reason behind Papercut's words. He wanted to use the dialogue within the encrypted channel to get Red Fox's attention. Papercut did not even expect Luo Nan to answer. He just wanted Red Fox to look at Luo Nan's pupils. One would be stunned no matter what. "Hey, Cat Eyes, the heck are you looking at the floor for?" At this moment that was filled with great pressure, something concealed stealthy above began to buzz, and suddenly came smearing across Papercut's head. He lifted his head and saw a flying drone the length of half an arm. It streaked across the rainy night sky and pierced into the reception hall of Frost River reality. It's painted a deep space gray. Is it the armies or the space forces? Papercut looked at where the drone came from and was a bit baffled. However, he did not think about it too much because a completely new image had suddenly popped up within the encrypted channel. It was a live stream. It was captured from up high, looking down inside Frost River reality. It looked like there was even a bit of a sway to it. Papercut immediately thought of the military drone just now. The surveyed scene produced by the military drone had entered the encrypted channel of the society. What was going on? Before he could understand things, the image was partitioned as it joined the rest of the surveillance screens of Frost River reality itself. Here, one could see the drone captured on camera. From this perspective, an eye-catching military emblem could be seen on the body of the drone. The drone continued to streak past several cameras as it flew nimbly and unhindered within Frost River reality. Its built-in camera captured the most crucial area, Area A, then the camera zoomed in and reduced its scope. It soon locked onto its true target. The fat corpse that Luo Nan had declared to be an Oblatum Knight appeared dead center within the camera. Then the image partitioned again and another live stream recording appeared. It captured the fat corpse from a different angle. What's going on? She's playing for keeps. Papercut and Bamboo Pole expressed their shock totally differently. Papercut turned his head in stupefaction only to see Bamboo Pole raise 3 fingers in indication. Papercut and Bamboo Fox were now about a meter away from Red Fox. It really seemed that Red Fox was lost in a trance. He was unaware of everything. Papercut threw away his distracting thoughts and no longer paid attention to the streaming videos in the encrypted channel. He counted to 3 under Bamboo Pole's direction and suddenly pounced. He reached out with his hand to grab Red Fox's left shoulder, as Bamboo Pole grabbed onto Red Fox's left shoulder. The two held him tightly to make sure Red Fox would not break free. However, they felt something odd when they made their move. A strange sensation that was empty yet real came out of nowhere. Well, whatever. Red Fox was under their control now. Red Fox was clearly a bit out of it, but he did not struggle. Papercut found things quite odd. Did Red Fox come around or did? With this strange feeling in mind, he brought his attention back to the encrypted channel. The gunmen of the Order of Justice had discovered this military drone, this troublesome intruder, and had raised their guns to fire on the spot. The military drone performed evasive maneuvers, but the gunmen had a high degree of implicit understanding with each other. Their lines of fire crossed, and the drone was blasted from the air by the electromagnetic rounds. The bird's eye view stream instantly went dark. However, the surveillance streams within the room were still active. Papercut saw that the drone also opened fire at the same time as the gunmen with its own allocated weapon. The drone's target was not a gunman, but the fat corpse sprawled on the ground. A verification by the military. Before Papercut could finish processing this thought, the fat corpse exploded apart in the next second. Globs of flesh and bone burst and splattered, piercing the walls nearby and leaving holes in the ground. Its penetration power was incomparable. Then there was something that made one's eyes go crazy. A thin figure shot out from the splatter of misty blood and instantly appeared on the surveillance screen. Chapter 117, Unfurling the Star River, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Holy hell! Papercut's startled cry represented the inner thoughts of absolutely everyone in the encrypted channel. Though this thin figure had moved quickly, None of the people within the encrypted channel had missed it with their eyes and ears. The sudden change was seen clearly. A thin person had clearly burst out from the exploded corpse. The surveillance screens were switching between feeds quite quickly. They switched continuously across areas, but they were only able to catch fleeting shadows of the figure. This situation continued for around 5 seconds before the feed turned dark. From this point on, all of the surveillance cameras were done for. Papercut rushed to ask Bamboo Pole, "What's going on?" Bamboo Pole was helpless. "Don't ask me. First, someone just directly took over the surveillance system using the highest privileges through official channels. Then the order of justice probably destroyed the cameras physically. Well, I've done my job. I can pull out now." Everyone ignored Bamboo Pole's bad joke as their minds were still flickering with the scene from earlier. A figure had leaped out from an exploding corpse. Undoubtedly, the debate from earlier was now concluded. However, it was extremely quiet inside the encrypted channel. Whether it be the party involved, Luo Nan, or the Viper, He Yueyin, no one spoke a word. They were clearly considering Red Fox's mood. It was good of them to do so, but Bamboo Pole and Papercut still decided to hold onto Red Fox tighter after glancing at each other. They wanted to prevent Red Fox from doing anything irrational in case he took it too hard. "The police are here." Red Fox spoke this sentence coldly. Their actions were too conspicuous. They stood out from the stream of people, and they looked like civilians catching a thief with their arms restraining Red Fox. The police officers who were controlling social order at the site had discovered them. They approached with their hands on their guns. Let alone police officers, Papercut did not dare to let go if even an emperor came over, because he did not know how to convince Red Fox to cooperate. In the end, Bamboo Pole spoke with psychological methods in mind. Real strong men accept it when they lose in a bet. "Do with me what you will." Red Fox was surprisingly frank, causing Bamboo Pole and Papercut to look at each other in surprise. They felt an incoming headache since Red Fox was being so calm right now. They were unable to judge him. With just a shake of his shoulders, Red Fox slipped free from their grasp. He did not do anything else, though. He just calmly spoke, "That fellow is Ghost Thunder. I've met him once." "Shoot, so it's actually a big shot." Papercut understood now as easily as it took to tear a piece of paper. Ghost Thunder was one of the most famous of the Oblatum Knights of Xia City's Order of Justice. This fellow's most famous ability was to turn most matter into terrifying explosives through contact with his hand. It synergized quite well with his excellent movement speed. Whether it be in an all-out assault or in a stealthy assassination, he was a character that brought terror to people. After the military drone had inexplicably verified the corpse, the drone had spurred the terrifying character to show himself. No one knew who Ghost Thunder would have as his next target. "The military has good timing," Bamboo Pole muttered under his breath, but he soon felt that was something off. Someone had a strange reaction when the military drone had entered Frost River reality. He turned to face Bamboo Pole. "What did you say just now?" "Play for keeps." "Who was playing for keeps?" Bamboo Pole did not answer him immediately. He first sent a message in the encrypted channel. "We've met up with Red Fox. You guys be careful. It's Ghost Thunder." Now, no one should have any objections toward the validity of Mr. Luo's all-encompassing sensing ability. He Yueyin was the one who spoke. She was in a situation where He Yueyin had apprehension toward her. No one ever expected that He Yueyin, the person in charge of the mission, would have no fear of making things big by speaking so bluntly. Papercut thought, crap, and instinctively grabbed Red Fox. However, Red Fox did not budge at all and remained completely expressionless. Could it be that Red Fox had truly accepted his loss, or did someone drug him? Papercut withdrew his hand in embarrassment. In the encrypted channel, He Yueyin had yet to understand the situation with Ghost Thunder. After raising the topic of Luo Nan's all-encompassing sensing, she gave out orders. Starting from now, all communications need to be done via the encrypted channel. Mr. Luo, cat eyes, confirm the radius of your all-encompassing perception's current range. 55 meters. Cat eyes responded bluntly. This number was 10% higher than her normal performance. 80 meters. The inhibition of Luo Nan's nerve activity had faded away by now, and Luo Nan had broken free from having a deaf ear to the external world. He had heard He Yueyin, then hesitated, before he reported a relatively conservative number. Since Luo Nan was not certain the needs of her mission at this time, he chose to exercise caution. This number was the limit when balancing living bodies with purely the material plane. He was a bit stronger than Cat Eyes in this aspect, but there was quite the difference if compared to the last operation where he reached a sensing radius of 500 meters. Sure enough, He Yueyin was a bit surprised. 80 meters. Luo Nan was just about to explain when Zhang Yingying revealed her violation of accessing classified information. Remember the report said 500 meters, right? However, Luo Nan was in an abnormal soul-attached state at the time. Right now his body and soul are merged as one, yet he is able to maintain 16% of his sensing radius. The shield of truth, is this useful? Luo Nan blinked. This number was acceptable. He could not refrain from asking, is 16% normal? What a noob! Zhang Yingying curled her lips in disdain, but she explained. The sensing range is affected in the body and soul merged state due to the limitations of the material plane. A mentally enhanced ability user will find the difference to be huge when compared to mental forms like the attached soul state, out-of-body state, and so on. Typically, it is normal to have the sensing range in a merged body and soul to be between 8% and 10% of a pure mental form. In turn, for a perception specialist like Kitty, things will change when she reaches the architect level. Kitty will be able to enter the out-of-body state whenever she wishes, and she will have an explosive increase in her sensing range. A 10-fold or even a 20-fold increase is possible. By then, you won't amount to much. Cat Eyes did not comment on Zhang Yingying's praise. She lacked all reactions completely. Luo Nan slowly nodded. He now had a rough understanding of his own level of power. Zhang Yingying's reasoning was correct. The shield of truth blessing was a vital support to the range of his current sensing. An 80-meter radius of sensing was the result of relying on a fleshly body with powerful resilience. However, Zhang Yingying had used the wrong number. 16% was not the sensing range he was able to maintain. It was 10% or maybe even lower. Last time, when his soul left his body, his wraith sign had strengthened twice, with 2 consecutive sacrificial rituals back in Jack's arena with Rui Wen. The range of his mental senses had reached 800 meters at the time. Additionally, his wraith sign had a successful hunt yesterday, causing his soul's strength to shoot up once again. The upper limits of his sensing range had probably increased as well, but he did not dare to try it out. Currently, Luo Nan's natural sensing range was only around 10 meters. using an upper limit of 800 meters to calculate. A ratio of only 1.2% was preserved. This was lower than the typical lower bound of 8% by 6 to 7-fold. It was simply tragic. The degree of imbalance with his body and soul had already reached such a stage. Increasing the strength of the fleshly body was not something that could be accomplished over the course of a single day. Urgency would not change anything. However, Luo Nan had reason to believe that his ratio of sensing range would not remain hovering around the 1% when the effects of the shield of truth were to fade away. He believed that this ratio would increase substantially. As for how much it would increase, Luo Nan would need to look at his life sketches and see whether or not he could find new interpretations that were rationally consistent with this old world. This currently seemed like a feasible direction to take. Draw a sketch, extract a configuration, use the most basic of dots and lines to portray an approximate yet clear-cut outline. This was the life sketch. When the sketch was simplified to the extreme, living spirits were portrayed one after another, formed from concise dots and lines like with cat eyes and Zhang Yingying. They became like constellations on the star charts that were used in ancient times. They jumbled out everywhere in the deep abyss of space, and revolved and moved around Luo Nan as he acted as the core. And this star atlas was expanding endlessly deeper and wider. Its current scope already spanned over 100 meters. It completely enveloped Area A of Frost River reality. Luo Nan was about to engross himself within these marvelous changes when He Yueyin's orders appeared within the encrypted channel. I want the locations of all the gunmen of the order. Dispose of them in the shortest time possible. Chapter 118, Within the Darkness, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. This was probably the most clear-cut order He Yueyin had given out tonight in this operation. She had even stickied her orders as written words within the encrypted channel. Current mission objective: dispose of all gunmen of the order. Prioritize non-ability users. The area spans Frost River reality and its surrounding connected buildings. Luo Nan is Executor Number 1. Cat Eyes is Executor Number 2. Everyone else, guard and safely transport Luo Nan and Cat Eyes to ensure that their mental senses cover the entirety of the area spanning Frost River reality and its surrounding connected buildings. Leave no stone unturned. The heck was this? It was an extremely clear objective, but not many people understood He Yueyin's intentions. If she wanted to dispose of the enemy, what about the Order's Oblatum Knights? What about Wang and the other first Oblatums of the secular side? Those were the big shots. It was true that the secular side currently had their full attention on Fairchild, but He Yueyin could not truly believe that the Order would let them easily take out their gunmen like in a target practice. Right. It was really impossible to tell what He Yueyin was thinking. Papercut turned to look at Bamboo Pole. You've been on a mission with the secretary before. Was her style the same? Papercut had spoken quite tactfully. There was a hidden meaning behind his words. He Yueyin was the commander of an elite military Deep Blue Walker squad, but suddenly she became quite unreasonable. Bamboo Pole did not speak. He just laughed and wriggled his ears and reminded Papercut that He Yueyin's orders were already in effect. All communications must be done through the encrypted channel as established by the Hexuia. As the commander, He Yueyin had cleared the content within the encrypted channel upon issuing these official orders. Only feedback, regarding the situation with the execution of the mission could be made. The meaning was clear. From now on, everyone just work on the mission at hand. Do not whine blindly. Next, He Yueyin issued orders that were even more concrete in detail. Luo Nan, Cat Eyes, and Zhu Lei will form the inner circle. Zhu Weilun and the other special forces will execute a closed-ring defense in accordance with their standard mobilization procedures. White Salt, Ying, and I will be in the outer circle as mutual support. We will advance in this protective formation in the 10 o'clock direction. Refer to the newest marked map for the latest information in real time. Outside of Frost River reality, Paper Cut, who possessed some basic tactical experience, felt as if his scalp was frying when He Yueyin's orders were issued. There was nothing much to be said about their travel route. The river dividing the battlefield, also known as the boundary between the private room area and the public arena, was at a 60-degree angle from their current position, the 10 o'clock direction. Their objective was extremely clear. Luo Nan was to display his all-encompassing perception to his utmost and cover all the enemies of Area A. This would allow them to pull a distance to react. This was quite the proper choice. However, there was a problem with their formation. The Special Forces closed-ring defense was a tactical formation used in close combat riot control. Its appropriate application was in situations where numerous thugs were attacking from all sides without long-range weapons. The objective was to protect those within the closed ring. Yet He Yueyin and the others were facing cold-blooded gunmen of the Order. There was also the pressure from the big-shot Ghost Thunder. The Order possessed many methods of long-ranged attacks. What if a high incendiary exploded at the dead center of their group? How would they deal with that? This, what the heck was He Yueyin thinking? While Papercut was dumbstruck, Bamboo Pole gestured toward him somewhat impatiently, alluding to Red Fox. Bamboo Pole was hinting that even Red Fox was able to restrain himself, so you should be able to as well. Currently, Bamboo Pole was the one who provided basic technical support of the marked map. This was his area of expertise. After he appeased Papercut in order to avoid any mishaps, he took the initiative to ask within the encrypted channel, "Boss Nan, can you confirm whether or not the information conversion of the marked map is operating as normal?" Perhaps Luo Nan was not used to it since he took 3 seconds to respond. Normal. Papercut scratched his head. The assumption could be made that quite a few of his companions participating in this operation had the same sentiments toward Luo Nan right now. Although no one doubted Luo Nan's sensing ability, Luo Nan was certainly far too crappy at doing purely practical work. Bamboo Pole was quite patient. He explained one step at a time. "I've already sent out control privileges in order to ensure a prompt refreshing. Right now, you are the first controller. The Secretary and Kitty can mark the route and place flags. Have you played the classic Minesweeper game? It's like that. Let's have you refresh the marked map into the encrypted channel using telepathic control mode." Oh, sure. It took a full 2 seconds, but the marked map was finally reset within the encrypted channel. The foundation of the image was still the elevation map of Frost River reality, and red and green dots still densely covered the map. Those who were part of the contention before noticed that the previous location of the fat corpse no longer had a red dot in its place. It appeared that the map's content and details had been refreshed. Bamboo Pole gestured with an OK sign toward Papercut and Red Fox, and winked. His intentions were that this little fellow was still redeemable. Red Fox responded with indifference, and Papercut just smiled wryly. Papercut felt that he was perfectly substituting for the role that Red Fox had previously played. No matter how one looked at it, no matter how awkward it was, he was being far too neurotic, right? Papercut tried to return to his calm state from earlier, but before Bamboo Pole could even finish his gesture, half of the 16 or so enemies marked with red dots on the map were wiped away in the span of a single breath. What the heck? It was a miracle that Papercut did not pass out. Did he make a mistake? He Yueyin was marking their travel route on the map at this time, but then the extending blue arrow clearly stopped. It seemed that she too was stunned by this sudden scene. The encrypted channel was silent for a time, but Luo Nan soon broke the silence with his voice. He sounded clearly a bit shaky, but he was doing his best to sound confident and experienced, kind of like a soldier making a report. 7 gunmen have been wiped out completely. He Yueyin. Cat eyes. Bamboo pole. Papercut shouted, "What the hell?" As for Red Fox, he smashed his fists together to create a crisp bang. Zhang Yingying, who was hopping around full of life for the fierce battle ahead, nearly sprained her ankle when Luo Nan provided them with this information. She hurriedly leaned against Bai Xinyan for support, turned around, and blurted, "Are you joking?" By now, numerous people had varied reactions. The motionless dots on the marked maps suddenly burst with activity. Luo Nan continued to provide new information, and Cat Eyes supplemented for him with a hoarse voice. "An Oblatum Knight is charging towards us from the 3 o'clock direction. He's gone. It's very likely to be Ghost Thunder. There are more behind us, 3 no 4 in total." An incorporeal rhythm seemed to explode in the atmosphere. What had once been a stagnant situation suddenly became like a plane stalling at high altitudes. Practically everyone felt dizzy to the point of absurdity. He Yueyin displayed her first-class mental fortitude at this time. She did not speak any nonsense and just issued orders. "Yingying, go in stealth toward the 10 o'clock direction. White Salt and I will protect our right flank. Move." Yet the instant her words dropped down, everyone's vision darkened. The crowd standing around and watching outside of Frost River reality let out startled cries at the same time. At this very moment, the focus of the crowd's gaze, the triangular spaceship that was Frost River reality, had its power supply completely cut off. The instant darkness contrasted with the spotlights outside and made the inside of the amusement center appear even darker. It only took 2 seconds for the startled cries to grow even more chaotic. The darkness no longer covered just Frost River reality. It spread to its 3 conjoined buildings at inconceivable speeds like an infection. The radiance of a myriad of camera flashes had never been as deathly white and as harsh as it was now. Chapter 118, Within the Darkness, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. Darkness had suddenly descended on Frost River reality, like a cleaving curtain covering one's head. Theoretically speaking, neither the ability users possessing supernatural powers or the special forces equipped with exoskeleton armor should be affected by this darkness. But when this darkness arrived, the atmosphere became filled with evil thoughts and killing intent. Such sensations floating in the air might have been a fabrication. However, the restless and negative psychic pressure was substantial and real. The members of the society were not certain about the range that the darkness covered, but they were able to directly experience the flavor of urgency and mania within the darkness. The more things were like this, the more they needed to stay steadfast. He Yueyin had the gun-toting and shield-wielding special forces deployed in such a way that Luo Nan was surrounded by them. He was in the center. Their movements were not that fast. Maintaining the formation was the #1 priority. Ghost Thunder and the other Oblatum Knights assaulted them with an all-out effort. The distance between the two sides suddenly shrank. Every Oblatum Knight was equal to a C+ rank awakened. They were limitlessly close to the architect level. Looking at them as a whole, they followed the same consistent logic of their order in their rigorous cultivation. The power they possessed was much more concentrated than that of even a focused ability user. Their power was direct and tyrannical. Moreover, they had a natural tacit understanding in regards to cooperation and coordination with each other. 4 Oblatum Knights placed their attention on the Society's squad as their fierce intent intertwined with each other and merged with the darkness. It was like the noiseless howl of a vicious evil beast of the void. The format pyramid upon the bodies of Zhu Weilan and the several special police officers began to sway at this moment. The pyramids were like candle flames swaying in the wind, nearly going out. The entirety of the attack then followed the flow of energy and information, going toward Luo Nan. They exploded over and over like firecrackers on Luo Nan's mental plane. The attack on his mental plane disturbed the structure of his body and soul. Luo Nan's feet trembled, and then Cat Eyes and Zhu Lei held him up by his arms. They moved while carrying him. Cat Eyes did not utter a word, but Zhu Lei whispered, "Nanster, you okay?" Luo Nan shook his head. The enemy had responded in quite the decisive manner. They changed the direction of their assault in the first instance to match with the changes in the power outage. They utilized the darkness to unleash powerful attacks. Their actions were filled with the taste of being premeditated. The uncomfortable feeling appeared once more, the same feeling he could always faintly discern ever since they left the private room. But this time, the feeling of unclearness and fuzziness lessened. The constellations, which were constantly revolving and traveling within his mental senses, were clearly revealing something. Luo Nan used a completely different perspective to analyze the subtle hidden information in the dark and the gloom. The most essential purpose of drawing the life sketches was to pull new interpretations of the world in a dimension that was best suited for him. It was to install an axis. It was to establish a standard. It was because of this that something marvelous would happen each time he drew a life sketch. As he pieced together the wonderful constellations, great quantities of noisy information collided with him like a swarm of bees. They circled within the surroundings of each constellation, and there were mutual influences. The information was slowed down by the constellations, giving Luo Nan time to comb through them and pick his choice. Such methods were quite rough. The big and small details fed back to him, when compared to being in an out-of-body state, were much more difficult to capture. He would certainly lose several meaningful details. At the same time, a lot of redundancy would remain. Yet it was an effective method of interpretation in the end. It was the most practical method that was best suited for Luo Nan. It did not matter what sort of hidden tricks the enemy used. As long as they were employed against Luo Nan to be sensed by him, he would naturally gain new interpretations from his star atlas. These interpretations were then integrated into Luo Nan's standards and rules. This allowed him to ultimately trace things back to its root and lock onto his target. The original information was fuzzy, But after the hurricane-like assault by the four Oblatum Knights and the onset of the omen of danger appeared within Luo Nan's mind, the information grew in clarity. In his eyes, the darkness was the deep background that was the void of space. Dozens of constellations and thousands of stars spiraled and roamed about. They were rapidly drawing closer to each other and were going to collide. What had once been a relatively static star atlas suddenly lit with unprecedentedly dazzling life force. It formed quite the interesting contrast with the restless negative psychic pressure on the plane of reality. The life sketch of each person was not the same as one another, and this difference was manifested within the form of their constellation. Some were simple, some were complicated, some were clear, some were fuzzy. Those that were clear, like Zhang Yingying's and cat eyes, were of those he had a deep understanding prior. For instance, He Yueyin and Bai Xinyan. They had powerful strengths and had configurations that were profound and exquisite. With his current level of analysis, there were naturally more constellations that were blurry and ambiguous. The four Oblatum Knights with Ghost Thunder as their leader possessed staunch strength and deep hostile intent. It would be much more difficult to draw them clearly. From Luo Nan's mental senses, the four Oblatum Knights, one in front and three in the back, were like four masses of nebulae exploding within deep space. They came leaping at his face. The collision on the star atlas level was faster by a beat than what the events on the plane of reality. When the fuzzy, chaotic mass of the two sides collided, the nodes and lines that were previously unclear changed. The blurring fog was cleaned, and their clarity was sharpened substantially. As the star atlas changed, He Yueyin, who was protecting their flank, issued an order. "White salt, shield us." The ceiling amidst the sheet of darkness burst and exploded as her voice fell. Boarding materials used for decorative purposes shattered into pieces amidst the explosion and turned into shrapnel that came flying from all sides. The special forces were well trained and experienced. They raised their shields and blocked the space above. The ring of debris pelting their shields rang for a time, with some loud sounds of pounding mixed in. The minute splitting of the structure of their shields suffering damage could be heard as well. The blast shields could guard those in the inner ring, but they could not extend their protection to the three women, He Yueyin, Bai Xinyan, and Zhang Yingying, who were roaming outside. Zhang Yingying was all right. She made 2 quick steps and evaded to the side. However, the remaining 2 women were caught in the range of the explosion of debris, and their reactions were entirely different. Bai Xinyan did not vary her movement speed at all, but a wave of coldness burst from her body to sweep across the empty space. No matter the debris, no matter the explosion, it was all instantly frozen. They were even stripped of their corresponding kinetic energy. They rustled like snow as they floated to the ground. Such a science-defying marvel nearly caused the eyes of the special forces to explode out from their sockets. Only then did they understand what He Yueyin meant when she told White Salt to shield us. He Yueyin responded differently as the cold wave flooded the darkness. She pressed closer instead of retreating. With her first step, her figure could still be seen. With her second step, her figure blurred and warped. By her third step, her figure had disappeared completely. All that remained was a brilliant arc of light that sliced through the darkness. The arc of light traveled over 30 meters before anyone realized its existence. Currently, the 4 Oblatum Knights were at distances that were less than 40 meters away on average. Clearly, He Yueyin attack slayed the enemy in the front of the assault formation. Her attack was slowed by a bit, so she ran the risk of mortal danger from the enemy's combined assault from all sides. Yet the arc of light traveled far too fast, leaving no time for anyone to be concerned with the matter. The radiant arc of light suddenly flashed and extinguished. Practically not a sound could be heard when the arc of light flashed and perished, yet a certain constellation collapsed into pieces within the star atlas of Luo Nan's senses. The constellation darkened and faded away. Even those with the keenest of ears were able to barely hear the spurting of blood within the darkness. Zhu Lei drew in a breath of shock to the side. A kill in less than 10 paces. Cat Eye's voice was also dry and hoarse in the encrypted channel. Confirmed kill on Ghost Thunder. A sheet of silence hung in the encrypted channel. It lasted until He Yueyin issued new orders. Accelerate toward the 12 o'clock direction. Zhang Yingying did not utter a word when the orders were issued. She changed course and increased her speed. As the team merged with the fringe of the darkness, He Yueyin's figure appeared. She continued to guard the flank, acting as if nothing had happened at all. If there was a change, it would probably be reflected in the glance of her eyes toward those in the center of the team formation. The target of the gaze was not Luo Nan, but the speechless Zhu Lei. Zhu Lei remembered He Yueyin's order to keep all communications within the encrypted channel. He immediately tightened his lips as all the hairs on his body raised. Chapter 119, Three Dark Clouds, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Luo Nan paid no mind to the subtle changes around him. His complete attention was placed upon the changes of his star atlas. When He Yueyin instantly slayed Ghost Thunder in one strike, the blurry, unclear nebula around Ghost Thunder was cleaved apart as well. Ghost Thunder's constellation had turned clear at the last moment before he died. Though the constellation soon darkened and faded away, the structural laws within gave Luo Nan an excellent reference point for analyzing the other Oblatum Knights of this order. Luo Nan's star atlas became much clearer in the blink of an eye. Accordingly, the obscure, unclear external force that was pressing down from the skies became all the more revealed. Luo Nan was able to tell that this force on his star atlas and the assault formation of the 4 Oblatum Knights affected each other and were related. But something happened when Ghost Thunder, who was at the head of the formation, was slayed in a single blow. The force, which was still being deployed, was struck into complete turmoil and had lost its order. After a few moments of struggle, it eventually and inevitably dispersed. This is bad. Luo Nan's worries were now placed over yonder. The force possessed a considerable amount of power and was directed on the mental plane. To have a high efficiency of effectiveness on the material plane, it would need to seek a suitable interference point to cut into. Therefore, it had not been able to truly make its move all this time. It just circulated and spiraled around, accumulating in power to strike a blow like thunder. Evoking one's sense of judgment would yield a conclusion. This charge-up technique was 1,000-fold in magnitude than the special case with Huang Bingjin, who had been stuffed all the way into the corner. Clearly, the winds of fate had turned against this force. It had barely found an opportunity to interfere and fully display its marvels through the 4 Oblatum Knights, but He Yueyin had struck out with a terrifying blow. She slayed the Oblatum Knight's weak point in one move. This caused a dreadful whiplash to happen, which then caused the accumulated force to be stopped and crumble. It dispersed all around. The dispersion of the considerable force was unimportant, but it did form an interference with the overall situation of Frost River reality. The special forces that surrounded Luo Nan were clearly wearing exoskeleton armors with temperature controls, but they all shivered one after another. They had received the eroding effect of this dispersed force. However, the format pyramids, which had been badly damaged to the point of being nearly extinguished, lit up once more on their chests. They were perfectly restored and were able to expel this ineffable cold chill cleanly away. This is quite the fast reaction time. By Xinyan lightly praised in the channel, she then took the chance to ask, "There aren't any problems with your body, right? Are you keeping an eye on the lasting time of the shield of truth's blessing?" "Shouldn't be any problems," Luo Nan replied casually. Most of his attention was still on his star atlas. The repair of the format pyramid blessing was not due to his fast reactions. It was due to his efforts to maintain the star atlas he had drawn with great difficulty. Why was Luo Nan concerned with the enemy? It was because the effects from the dispersion of the force were super annoying. Frost River reality became a sheet of chaos within the next few seconds. The trapped civilians captured by terror within the darkness were the most susceptible. This force that overflowed with negative psychic waves caused all those without mental defenses to fall apart. For a time, screams and cries resounded within area. The situation was incomparably more miserable than when the gunmen had wreaked havoc with their sadistic actions. The unsteady hearts of the people influenced the life sketches. Luo Nan was mulling over whether to give all those within the range of his mental senses some sort of blessing, but it was too late in the end. The devastating, negative psychic waves quelled and staked the souls of nearly 100 people. Handling the situation was beyond the scope of his ability. It was unavoidable for the star atlas to shake intensely. Luo Nan could feel every constellation trembling. Several of them were displaced, and their manifested structures were warping. This wasted at least half of Luo Nan's efforts thus far. "Damn it!" Luo Nan could not refrain from cursing. "The hell is going on over there?" Zhu shot a few glances at He Yueyin. At last, he could not refrain from whispering to her. Right now, miserable cries and shrieks flooded their ears. He was unable to take the atmosphere. He would rather have a few powerful foes pop out of nowhere and stake his life in battle. He Yueyin's divine blade technique had struck fear into the hearts of the enemy. In addition, the force which powered the enemy up had collapsed. The few Oblatum Knights hesitated to make a move, allowing the team of society members to smoothly advance. Luo Nan shook his head to try and shake away the anxiety in his heart. He released some information in the encrypted channel in order to comfort Zhu Lei and to report on the situation he was observing. There really isn't much to say. Just that there was someone up to some trouble. Secretary, he slayed him in a single strike, causing a whiplash and their power to go out of control. However, it won't cause any substantial damage. There were no more than 3 people within the entire team who truly understood Luo Nan's words from inside out. However, there was no one who doubted his words after he displayed brilliant performances one after another. They were actually affected by Luo Nan's train of thought, conjecturing and pondering a lot more. Cat Eyes also made a report at this time. "My sensing range is being affected. Currently, its radius is 40-38 meters. Mr. Luo." He Yueyin immediately looked for Luo Nan to confirm. Luo Nan did a general scan. Though his star atlas had yet to stop shaking completely, the range of his senses was not greatly influenced. The positions of each Oblatum Knight was all in the palm of his hand. He immediately said, Things are all right on my end. Zhang Yingying interjected. How much is all right? 80 meters. Luo Nan reported the same number as he did previously. Actually, his sensing radius for the plane of life had already broken through 120 meters. Moreover, it continued to expand in a leisurely manner. Oh, hold on, did I get something mixed up? As Luo Nan's thoughts suddenly deviated, Zhang Yingying continued to speak with emotion. Aberrant. The more I look at it now, the more I feel that your all-encompassing senses are abnormal. Why is it that you can always see what others can't? Is it because you're infused with psychic powers? He's on a higher level. His viewpoint is different. To the side, Cat Eyes gave a direct assessment of Luo Nan, an action that was rarely seen from her. Her assessment was the result of her continuous observations of Luo Nan. The direction of application is different. Bai Xinyan also joined in the discussion. Cat Eye's long-range perception is a technique that works closely with her body. Student Luo Nan's sensing ability seems to be a purer, more concentrated observation. Of course, this means it's easier for his ability to fall apart. Correct, the direction is different, Luo Nan responded suddenly. Cat Eyes needs to perform a timely response to all changes in the range of her perception. Every single detail needs to be clarified. I, on the other hand, don't need to consider other problems. I just need to make choices with the precision, range, and levels in accordance with the observation needs. It was impossible to continue with this discussion. Zhang Yingying tilted her head, and she rolled her eyes. This is the most aberrant thing of all, okay? So you can change the frequency of your mental senses as you wish. There are those who have trained arduously and polished cautiously in order to find a most suitable soul frequency for them. Those countless ability users are fixed in the mentally enhanced focus. You'll make them go out of their minds if they hear of this. The discussion within the encrypted channel had abruptly stopped. Luo Nan was not aware that he had suddenly ended the topic. It could even be said that his heart was filled with ease and delight. Indeed, communication was the best way to solve problems. If it was not, he would now be making large, crazy strides in the wrong direction. Too thin, too narrow. A problem occurred with the direction of his concentration while he was drawing his life sketches. There were parts standing out that possessed details that were most difficult to carve. He was unable to use his finite mind to resolve these near-inexhaustibly deep configurations. Behold, even though the star atlas was in disorder and was in endless turmoil, every oblatum knight and every trapped civilian was unable to break away from his clairvoyance. The obscure and unclear force was also ultimately locked on by his observations. This was not because of how meticulously he carved out these sketches. It was because of the compositional whole of the area under the control of his senses. He observed the broad outline. He knew the flow of direction, and that was enough. He did not dig deep into the details, and instead, he looked at the overall situation. He went and used his clairvoyance upon the entirety of what he could access in the region, where the mental plane and material plane interfered mutually. He observed the plane of life in its entirety. In fact, doing this was much simpler than he had imagined. Chapter 119, Three Dark Clouds, Part 2-2. Translator, Strivon. To know the whole, one must first see. One must simply see. His old methods of clairvoyance were unable to break free from the stereotypes of the old interpretations of the world. He had followed the old conventions obediently as he expanded his domain. He had taken into account the endurance and processing power of his body when it came to receiving large quantities of information. However, after switching to new interpretations, all he had to do was draw. These drawings were casual whole impressions reproduced from his senses and memory. All he needed was to grasp one or two characteristics of living movement, so it was fine to synthesize them through concise strokes. This was the difference between sketching and speed sketching. This was the difference between meticulous brushwork and freehand brushwork. Luo Nan generalized his life sketches into two components: speed sketching and configuration. Speed sketching should be done first and foremost. This was the core where the whole of his ideas resided. This was the true direction of application. Before the whole composition could be confirmed, carved details, no matter how true, would likely be warped and absurd when looked at with the whole. Just like with the out-of-place disorder with his star atlas. The whole, Luo Nan emphasized to himself in a hypnotic manner. He closed his eyes, then reopened them. Then he closed them again. By doing this, he was able to forget his old observational methods. His thoughts and consciousness were able to expand outward and reach new heights. He was able to go further beyond and to broaden magnificently. Right now, the range of his clairvoyance was like the contraction and expansion of a heart, like the rise and fall of a tide. It contracted, it expanded, it swelled, it receded. The changing frequency was growing faster and faster. The changing spectrum was growing larger and larger. It was truly like a great river bursting through a dam. It flooded all around, flowing freely. It was like the shattering of an iron mold. Stereotypes and conventions no longer existed. There was an instant when Luo Nan felt his body and soul about to be scattered into the void. It lasted until his dark chains trembled. The power of his "My heart's a prison" format appeared, and only then was he able to draw himself in. At the same time, the range of Luo Nan's mental senses was restored to the apex value of when he was in his out-of-body state. It reached 800 meters, and after a few breaths of time, the radius exceeded 1 kilometer. It was expanding endlessly. The entirety of Frost River reality, including the 3 buildings supporting this indoor amusement center, and even the surrounding area, was within the range of his mental clairvoyance. Fuzzy constellations appeared one after another. They represented everyone in Frost River reality. It was not just the few who were near Luo Nan. It included Frost River reality, bays, 7 oblatum nights, nearly 100 trapped civilians. They represented people outside of Frost River reality. It included the police officers above the 3 buildings supporting Frost River reality. It included the thousands of civilians crowded around and watching. They were all totally integrated into Luo Nan's star atlas. Stars bright like diamonds formed this constellation system. There were also shadows that were hard to see with the naked eye, and there were also hazy and turbid dark clouds. The shadows were the building construction, furniture, equipment, decorations, and other useless dead ends. The dark clouds were living outlines of people who were hard to analyze within a short period of time. Though Luo Nan lacked the ability to depict them, the contrast between motion and static, inanimate objects and living beings, awareness and unawareness, evoked a marvelous and exquisitely consistent relationship. Brightness and shadows interweaved. Light and darkness matched together. Emptiness and substance alternated under each other's influences. Each and every constellation, shadow, and dark cloud had their boundaries with each other be gradually blurred. They weaved amongst each other, strewn at random. However, their trajectories were clear, with rules and laws behind them. In the end, they formed an endlessly snaking star river of splendor. The river unfurled itself. It was without a doubt that this was the most profound and magnificent scene Luo Nan had ever drawn in his life. It possessed a nearly inexhaustible amount of layers and marvels. If he had the chance, Luo Nan really wanted to mesmerize himself within these layers, to ponder and savor over every detail. But today, he would not immerse himself within. He just used an independent, separated, detached, and wonderful point of view to capture and draw the compositional outline of this star river scene. As a whole, it was quite appropriate to describe what he perceived as a star river. It was as if Luo Nan was standing at the dead center of an enormous galaxy. The starlight was sparse in the area he occupied, but surrounding him were three enormous and bright spiral arms unfolding out. They accurately represented the number of living beings in Frost River reality, and the three buildings it was connected to. However, there was also a hazy dark cloud entrenched at the end of each of the three spiral arms. The three dark clouds obstructed the starlight. They even interlinked channels between the dark clouds. The channels drew out a region of turbid darkness that pressed heavily atop the star river. The darkness even permeated within. It was hard to see their true identities. It was without a doubt that the three dark clouds represented the positions of the first oblatums of the secular side in the order of justice. Looking at the current situation, it seemed that his previous judgment was true. Three first oblatums, they were all here. Well, he had found the most important targets of this night. The expansion of Luo Nan's mental senses was still continuing. This lasted until the limit of its distance broke through 2 kilometers. Only then did the expansion rate begin to attenuate. The enormous Star River scene had already covered 3 bustling blocks of the city. The highest elevation it reached was to the high-altitude traffic layers. The lowest it penetrated was to the enormous underground sewage system of the city. The life sketches that represented living beings were in the tens of thousands. The number of stars was nearly impossible to count. Of course, from Luo Nan's perspective, the pure void or inanimate objects were the meaningless regions of shadows. They were meaningless unless he chose to expend a lot of his energy, change his observation methods, and meticulously use his clairvoyance. Luo Nan felt pressure once again at this time. There was a mutual influence between the stars. They were affecting each other. An enormous tension was ultimately formed within the depths of the Star River, and far too much redundant information was formed as well. The gigantic dimensions of the river had naturally increased the amount of information he received and the planar area he could access. Though he did not actively sense them, the enormous plane of life confined to Zia City was like the myriad of galaxies of deep space. Their lights radiated over. After a moment of consideration, Luo Nan actively reduced the radius of his sensing to be 1,500 meters. He continued to shrink the range until it reached approximately a kilometer. This was to precisely have the whole building complex of Frost River reality and its connected buildings incorporated within. Things were going steady so far, and there was enough tolerance for error. The dazzling Star River flowed silently, light splintered, and shadows shifted. A fuzzy and subtle relationship was maintained with the faint starlight projection from further away. Upon fixing his clairvoyance range, His spreading power was retracted, and his sense of detail grew even sharper. They affected each other and began to fine-tune one another. Inharmonious nuances were spontaneously influenced, allowing Luo Nan to tear through the chaotic masses without the need for direct observation. However, the dark clouds located on top of the three buildings remained thick and solid. It was hard to observe through them. Well, at least two of the clouds were like this. The last cloud had accumulated quite the surplus of mass. Thick could not even describe it, yet why did Luo Nan get a sense of familiarity from it? Luo Nan had a plan in mind. He withdrew his mind for now, and he tried to put his hands in his pockets due to habit. He was completely focused, and had forgotten that his arms were being gripped by Zhu Lei and cat eyes. When his hands did not move as he expected, his forearms swung down and were flung a bit too far. His hand smacked into a place that was quite buxom and elastic. There was a faint sound. Cat eyes instantly turned to look at him at this very moment. Though they were in the darkness, and the brim of Cat Eye's hat covered her eyes with dark shadows, her gaze flashed with an aura as cold as ever before. The sting from her gaze forced Luo Nan to squint. However, the most important thing was to fish out the object from his pockets. It was true that his hand was touching the cloth of some pants, but its pockets did not belong to him. Luo Nan tried to move his hand away, rubbing the surface a few times, but he was unable to move his arms where he wanted to. He could only face Cat Eyes and say, "Let go for a moment, I need to get something from my pockets." At this moment, Luo Nan seemed to feel Cat Eye's grip on his arm grow a bit stronger, but in the end, she let go without saying much. Luo Nan was finally able to put his hands into his pockets and take out the metal box with the downloaded human-faced arachnid exoskeleton armor. He weighed it in his hands. Cat Eye's hand noiselessly stuck back to his upper arm at this very moment. She maintained her hold over him and spoke with a barely audible whisper, "Do you need help?" Luo Nan looked at Cat Eyes again. Her gaze was still clear and cold, but the vague silhouette of her mouth was in an unreadable curve within this dusky darkness. Her lips hooked slightly into a very contradicting smile, but there was a sense of a never-seen-before novelty to it. He had the impulse to take up a pen and draw just by looking at her. Luo Nan blinked his eyes, but he nodded after a short while. "Okay, can you help me break open this box?" Chapter 120, Too Unsightly, Part 1-2. Translator, Strivon. Break it open. A cold glow could be seen in Cat Eye's narrow eyes. She was skeptical. "Weren't you going to use it as evidence?" Luo Nan blinked once again, but since he had drafted a mental outline beforehand, he said, "Well, I suspect that this toy has been messed around with. The enemy is using it to set up something like a snake hive. They're tracking and locking onto our positions." Several people cast glances of shock the moment Luo Nan uttered these words. These words violated He Yueyin's request to use the encrypted channel for all communications. The words came out from his mouth and entered everyone's ears, but they were not concerned about this violation. "Is that true?" Zhang Yingying turned in curiosity. Think back to when He Yueyin slayed Ghost Thunder in a single move and affected their plans. If she hadn't killed Ghost Thunder, they might have already made the final step to have their plans come to fruition. Or at least, that's the way I feel about things. Luo Nan relied on the bit of information he raised to blurt out some baseless words. He had thrown all logic out the window by the end of it. Regardless, there really were people who believed in his words. Zhang Yingying asked with bulging eyes, "Then why aren't we getting rid of it ASAP?" Don't we need to destroy it first? Humph, Fairchild gave this to you. What if he sets out to punish you later on? You think so? Luo Nan's expression of amazement defeated all of the others. Zhang Yingying waved her hand. Forget it. Since you've said such words, just watch me. A clearly light cry rang in everyone's ears as her voice fell. It was like the vibration of wind chimes, and it was quite pleasing to the heart. There was a slight jolt in Luo Nan's hand, and he saw the rather thick metal box split noiselessly into two halves. A faint spark flashed before it disappeared without a trace. The box split between his thumb and forefinger, and a cold air seeped into his skin. It was as if an incorporeal sharp blade had sliced against his skin. Luo Nan could not refrain from glaring at Zhang Yingying with bulging eyes. If the cut had been just a bit lower, his hand would have likely been amputated on the spot. Don't mention it. Zhang Yingying waved her hand as she laughed cheerily. You're still not getting rid of it. It should be fine. Luo Nan had nothing to say to Zhang Yingying. But after blurting out a few words, something came to mind. He added, we don't know who is the first oblatum that has made their move. It looks like this first oblatum is on quite the ordinary level. Subsequent changes were completely terminated the instant Ghost Thunder died. Zhang Yingying could not hold back from rolling her eyes. No matter how ordinary the enemy was, they were at least a clear-sworn first oblatum, okay. Clear-sworn first oblatums are calculated to be at the C+ rank, an overwhelming power that could crush everyone here except for He Yueyin and Bai Xinyan. Just as her words were about to leave her mouth, a dull voice sounded out from the flank. There are 3 first oblatums in Xia City for the Order of Justice. It's said that Qingli is likely to be the most egotistical one out of them. He is the youngest. He depends on the power of his elders quite a bit. And Weng is his granduncle. And Qingli, He Yueyin shot Zhang Yingying a cold glance just as she wanted to interrupt. She tapped her ears. Clearly, He Yueyin was reminding everyone not to violate the mission needs by chatting with their mouths open. Some people sure can get away with double standards. Well, the boss is the boss. Zhang Yingying posted a big thumbs-up icon in the encrypted channel. The taste of sarcasm was overflowing in her words. This all came as quite the surprise to Luo Nan, causing him to stare dumbstruck at He Yueyin. No one should have been able to understand the purpose of his words just now, but she had flawlessly gone along with him. It seemed that Qingli was truly the first oblatum in question. The effects of her words were God knows how many times better than what he could have done. He Yueyin turned her gaze over and gave Luo Nan a slight nod. Luo Nan did not have the time to think deeply about her actions. His heart stirred, and although his eyes looked at He Yueyin, the dark cloud that he had locked onto within the splendorous Star River on the mental plane had lost its original stability. Right now, it was surging and raging. Its aura was astonishing, but it could not exceed the display of the other 2 majestic and solid dark clouds. Moreover, streams and streams of turbid darkness split from this dark cloud. The streams charged toward Frost River reality and permeated within. Though the dark cloud was still spiraling and accumulating power, Luo Nan felt a cold chill. The enemy's target was over here, and their malice was clear. There was a distinct feeling of fury and impatience to it all. These emotional flavors emerged clearly within Luo Nan's clairvoyance. This matter was urgent. Luo Nan tossed away the split box, and he dispersed his mind into the dark atmosphere around him. The raw materials required to produce a human-faced arachnid were stowed away in the metal box. It was like the toner of a printer. It was useless if you took it out by itself. It would only dirty one's hands. But when matched in a complete set with a computer and a printer, complicated clear scripts and characters could be formed. Within the entirety of Xia City, Luo Nan was probably the best person to form a complete set with these raw materials. At the very least, the current situation showed that Luo Nan's studies and understanding toward the human-faced arachnid was deeper than that of the order of justice. The toner was drifting through the air in scatter bits. With none of the others aware of it at all, Luo Nan gathered this toner using his soul's strength. He needed it a few times, but he still felt it was awkward to work with. His consciousness sunk into the external neuron, and he activated the format pyramid interface. Through this interface, he was able to link up with the Wraith sign located several dozens of kilometers away. He did not need this fellow to do much. He just needed the Wraith sign to wait there like a good boy to act as a model for him. Something unexpected happened when he took over the Wraith sign through the format pyramid system. The Star River clairvoyance system he had just established received additional information from the Wraith sign's side. The range of Luo Nan's clairvoyance could not possibly reach that far, but the response was exactly the same as it was normally. The increase in dimensions made the receiving information become much richer. The Wraith sign was not a living being. Deep within its structure was a mass of chaos. There was nothing to it that could be described as a life sketch. Yet an obscure shadow was formed with this chaotic mass of a structure under the starlight and control of the format pyramid system. This shadow was mapped over to Luo Nan through long distances. The strength of this simple projection was far too small. It could not be used for much, but it acted as an excellent template. Originally, Luo Nan just wanted to look at the Wraith sign's structure in order to make a slavish copy. He just wanted to make a low-grade imitation, like drawing a dipper using a gourd as a model. But since this projection was here, he just simply tossed the raw material within it. This way, the result would legitimately be a high-level imitation product, right? However, it was not that easy to reproduce the human-faced arachnid. Huang Bingjin had followed the order's ways to gather the so-called raw materials required. But these raw materials were of the lowest quality. Right now, the Wraith sign was not even inclined to shoot a glance at such impure materials. No matter how good of an imitation that would be formed, it would just be an imitation after all. Its functions would be simplified, and its power would be quite average. However, Luo Nan felt that this would be sufficient. Soon, a human-faced arachnid that was closer in its form to its initial state, the burning wraith, floated in the air. The efficiency of the order's methods was quite bad. There was no one here who could see this human-faced arachnid, save for Luo Nan. The mental plane was a structure that was deep and endless, containing many levels. It was like a cascade of dark curtains, and it was the best place to conceal one's self from the human-faced arachnid's perspective. It was extremely difficult to access the deep levels of the mental plane, even for Cat Eyes, who was an expert at perception or powerful ability users like He Yueyin and Bai Xinyan. However, Luo Nan was able to probe to the deep levels of the mental plane with his mental senses from the very beginning. He was completely different from the others. Perhaps the reason was due to his mental senses being purely used for observation. Under the control of Luo Nan's consciousness, the low-configuration version human-faced arachnid noiselessly submerged into the void. It soon followed one of the three spiral arms of the Star River and arrived at the fringe of the raging dark cloud. Within the dark cloud, lustrous rays of emotion continued to shine. Luo Nan thought back to the events of last week, back to when he faced Jack. The Wraith sign had pulled out a deep and impressive trick. This fellow had emulated and transformed into a piece of information and a bit of emotion. It seeped into Jack's thought process and advanced layer by layer all the way until it reached the depths of Jack's soul. It was obvious that the human-faced arachnid possessed a similar instinct. Luo Nan was not asking much of this low-configuration version. He just needed it to go inside and transmit information out to him. The human-faced arachnid flickered outside the dark cloud. It faced the rays of emotion within the cloud and dived in. Check out my sporadic streaming on Twitch, https://www.twitch.tv/strivon. Chapter Synopsis. Luo Nan explains that the enemy is likely using the metal box to track their movements, which is why he wants to destroy it. Zhang Yingying happily slices the box in half with her ability. Luo Nan openly taunts the first oblatum and Qingli, and He Yueyin catches on, and taunts as well by speaking, without using the encrypted channel. Luo Nan turns his attention to the mental plane. Sure enough, he could feel the enemy's fury quite clearly. He then takes the contents of the metal box, the raw material used to make a human-faced arachnid, to make a high-level imitation of his wraith sign. Luo Nan sends the new human-faced arachnid into the dark cloud that surrounds the furious first oblatum. He seeks to have this arachnid to transmit information back to him from within the cloud. That's a wrap for this installment. Thank you all for watching and supporting Lord of the Stories. If you enjoyed this tale, please hit the like button, share it, and subscribe for more amazing stories. You can also explore other series updated daily in our playlists. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next episode.